on board to have this conversation with. I know it's going to be a blessing to many. So
Yeah.
I'm going to thank you so much for being our host tonight.
No problem. Thank you so much. Is the guests, are they in?
Yes, they're being admitted right now.
Okay. Well, good evening, Crossing Point and Facebook and YouTube family and friends. My name is Kia Gabriel, and I am the wife of Pastor Roman Gabriel, who is the assistant pastor here at the Cross. And I'm so glad and so grateful to be able to have the opportunity to be here tonight. We are excited that we have two special guests tonight that's going to be sharing some great information for us. For some of you who do not know that September is National Suicide Prevention Month. And so I reached out to Pastor Hayes and Lady Shannon and asked if the Cross can do their part by bringing awareness here tonight. And so here we are. So I'm grateful and I'm honored. And so I actually sent out a text couple of weeks ago to some of my family and friends and asked them if they knew anyone who was willing to share their story, someone who may have attempted suicide or may have had a family or friend who have attempted suicide or committed suicide that was strong enough to do that. And so here we are. So I got a text from one of my friends, and she told me I have to get in contact with Miss Kimberly Hill. Miss Kimberly Hill has a story, a powerful story that will help a lot of people. We just never know what people are going through. We never know what's going on with people's lives, and especially during this time that we're in right now. And so I reached out to Miss Kimberly, and she kind of gave me a brief story of her daughter. And once I hung up the phone with Miss Kimberly, I was in tears because just to hear the strength of a mother and the strength of a strong woman who um, want to continue on and tell her daughter's story. And so I'm so honored that she is joining us tonight. And once I hung up with Miss Kimberly, I wanted to reach out to one of my friends who is a licensed professional counselor, Miss Joyce. And so Joyce is joining in. Hi, Joyce. And so I wanted to bring her in as well because Joyce has a lot of information. Me and Joyce used to work together at a nonprofit called Remind, and Remind provided free support groups for anyone who was affected with depression and bipolar. And so Joyce and I work together, and Joyce have a lot of information, and I adore her. And so we always stayed in contact with each other. So I wanted Joyce to come in to give her professional experience as well to help us with this call this afternoon. So I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for the Cross, and I'm so grateful for Pastor Hayes and First Lady Shannon to allow us to be here and use this platform. Again, there's just so much going on in this world, and we just never know what people are going through. And so I just want to thank Facebook. I want to thank YouTube, everyone who's watching us live. Please, at the time, this is the time to share, the time to like, because we want to get this word out to anyone who may be going through something right now that we may not even know about. So at this time, I would like to bring in our guest, Ms. Kimberly Hill. Ms. Kimberly, like I said, I had the privilege of speaking to her last week, and so this is the first time we saw each other face to face. So, hi, Miss Kimberly, and she look even more beautiful in person than she do in her pictures. And so, I would like to bring her in and let her tell her story about her daughter that committed suicide a couple of years ago. And so, at this time, if we can always, support her as she, tell us, her story and tell us a little bit about herself. This is the time where we can lift up hearts and likes and just share right now and give her support. So Ms. Kimberly, you have the floor. You can come in and tell us, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a story about your daughter. You're on mute. You still on mute. You're on mute. Okay.
Sorry,
That's
me and
okay.
technology, it's a struggle.
That's okay. We all get used to it.
First, I'd like to say thank you for having me. This is not an easy walk. I went back and forth with even if I wanted to tell my daughter's story, because some of the things that, I feel are relevant for people to hear is her story. And, I felt like, some of the things she may not have wanted told, but the reason why I have opted to go ahead and share this information is because I think our young people are hurting. They are hurting, they're struggling. In the last 9 days, I live in a small town in Knoxville, Tennessee, but in the last 9 days, I've had 2 friends to lose children to suicide. So that lets me know that this indeed is a necessary conversation. And to make the pain that I feel in losing my daughter have meaning, it's necessary for me to tell this story. And even if it helps one parent, one child, then I think that sharing my daughter's story, sharing my story is beneficial. So that's why I'm here. And so my daughter, Mary, we called her Kemi, Kemi for short, was 24 years old. And she was so smart and so beautiful and so talented. And she was one of my 3 daughters. And out of the 3, I just really felt like I didn't have to worry about her. She was the middle child. Everything about her was, she kind of went through school easy. She never had any kind of major struggles in high school, middle school, elementary school, very responsible, wise beyond her years. And I just never thought that it could be possible that she would be struggling with depression or any types of ideations of suicide. Like I said, she went straight through, high school, went right off to college. And once she got to college, that is when things kind of took a turn for her. She was never real social. She was always very private, very quiet. Didn't even go to prom. She just wasn't that type of young lady. She didn't have a lot of friends, but she was able to make friends and maintain friendships. So when she went off to college, she went to Tennessee State University in Nashville, and it just was not a good fit for her. She struggled socially at Tennessee State University. And so she decided that she wanted to transfer to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. And so when she transferred, it seemed like a good fit for her. She seemed to be kind of finding her niche, finding her peer group, finding her social group. And then she started expressing desires to move off campus. And I work in higher ed. I teach at the University of Tennessee. I begged her not to move off campus because I didn't want her focus to be on work, on paying bills, on trying to get back and forth to school. I wanted her to stay on campus, live that college, on campus college experience, and just focus on school and nothing else. But she wanted to move off campus, and she was a very matter-of-fact person that just, once she made up her mind to do something, that's what she tended to do. So she moved off campus. And once she moved off campus, my fears became reality. She started working more, and school started to take a back page to work and paying bills and relationships and adulting, just trying to live life as an adult. And the pressure of that got to be so much that she left school prematurely. Her senior year, actually, she left school and she came back home, and she started working a series of jobs and just was not real fulfilled in those jobs. It's not that they were bad jobs. It's just that it's just not what she envisioned herself doing. I know she had always spoke of becoming a psychologist, and she was working customer service type jobs, and she just wasn't happy with the trajectory that she found her life moving in. And so she called me at work one day and told me, "Mom, I need you to come down to the Federal Building." And, you know, I was like, "The Federal Building?" She said, "I'll tell you when you get here, just come down to the Federal Building." So I went to the Federal Building, and lo and behold, she was enlisting into the military. She was joining the Army. And mortified, I said, "Why are you doing this? You know, you can go back to school." And she said that she just was ready to get her life started, and that she was going to go back to school, and that the military was going to be a way that she could pay to go back to school. So, you know, I had to support her in that choice. And my family, we all supported her in that choice. Even though we weren't 100% in agreement with it, we supported her when she went off to basic training. And so when she went to the Army, you know, I told you life started to change when she went off to college. It changed even more when she went into the Army. She was struggling. She was not struggling with the academic requirements of learning a new skill, a new trade, learning how to be a soldier. She didn't struggle with that aspect of it, but she always struggled with the physical component, the running in particular. And so she was reset. She didn't get to graduate with her peers in the Army. She had to prove basically that she was able to keep up with the physical components of the Army. So she had to restart a portion of her basic training, and she was very disheartened by that. And so I started noticing a change in her mood. You know, she had periods of happiness and being her normal, joyful self, but you could see a change in her demeanor. She started to be a little bit more irritable. She was much, much more private and started to isolate more from not just me. She was very close to my parents. She started to even kind of isolate herself from them. And so that isolation was a major red flag that I didn't notice to be what it was at that time. You know, I didn't know the seriousness of it. Then she finally graduated from basic training, and things appeared to be going better with her military service. And all of a sudden, she started wanting to avoid going to training. She started having lots of physical ailments, stomach upset, and they were real ailments. I mean, she would end up going to the hospital. She would be at the doctor. She was taking medicine for stomach trouble. It was like her nerves were getting the best of her a lot. And I at the time was also struggling with my third bout of Hodgkin's lymphoma and had undergone a stem cell transplant. And so I remember her saying, "Well, Mom, I can come and take care of you, and then you can let the Army know that, you know, I can't be there." She started avoiding going for her monthly service in the Army, and she had been real irritable with me right prior to me going to have that stem cell. She did take off, and she came to support me and was my caregiver actually while I was going through that stem cell transplant. And that irritability that I noticed that she had prior to me leaving was gone. She went from being very to being around me quite a lot, being very pleasant and almost in a place of peace. The whole time she came, you know, she was in Texas. She was in a very peaceful place. So I thought that she was getting better, that some of that anxiety that I noticed that she had early on when she joined the military. I thought some of that anxiety was leaving. And, I felt good about, where she was. So after I had a few weeks, and then when I came back home, she had been staying with my parents, but when I was gone, she decided that she wanted to stay at my home alone. So that was kind of odd because she liked being around my parents. So she had been staying at my home alone. And when I came home, she was still trying to help me and kind of take care of me. And that is when I started to really know my daughter as an adult. Before that, I'd seen her as my daughter, a young woman. I didn't know her as a woman. That 2 weeks, I came home and it was 2 weeks later that she died. But those 2 weeks leading up to her death, I talked to her more than I ever talked to her. She shared more with me about how she actually felt about things than she'd ever shared before. And, we spent a lot of time together right before she passed away. And in those couple of weeks leading up to her death, when I look back on conversations that we had in hindsight and look back on some of the behaviors that I saw in hindsight, I can see it so clearly. I could see so clearly that she was telling me that she couldn't do it. In fact, I remember being in the kitchen one time and her walking in and just kind of standing around, making small talk. And she looked at me very serious and said, "Mom, I'm just not going to be able to do it." And I said, at the time, I thought she was talking about her job that she did not like. She was in the Army Reserve, so she still worked a regular job. And I thought she was talking about this job that she had shared some pretty unpleasant things about. She said, "I'm just not going to be able to do it." And I said, "Oh, yeah, you can do it." I'm telling her what I would do if I was her. I wasn't listening really to what she needed to say to me, I don't think, because I went right into that. "Oh, yeah, you can do it. You'll be all right. You can handle it." And so she just kind of looked at me with a real serious look and walked off. And I didn't think anything of it at the time, but in hindsight, I think she was telling me then that life, she couldn't do life. Another time I came home, I have another daughter that's younger than Mary was, and I had taken her to some medical appointments that were out of town. And I came home and she was just laying in the yard, just laying up in the yard on a blanket, looking up at the sky, just pondering. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she got up real quickly and she said, nothing. But I just remember thinking how odd that was. That was not her normal behavior, to just go lay out in the yard and look up at the sky and almost look like she was pondering now whether I can back now and say she was pondering whether she even wanted to live or not. I can say that. And then another time, I remember coming home and she had just opened a door and just thrown her whole plate out of the door, just threw it out, plate and all. And just her behavior was so inconsistent and different. She was so withdrawn. I didn't see it for what it was, but she had resigned herself. I know that she wasn't going to be here. And then finally, that last day of her life, I was out of town again with my daughter, my younger daughter. And I had talked to her off and on that whole day. She was irritated. There were some things going on her job. There were some things going on in her personal life. There were some things going on that she was just, she kept texting and calling. And I would answer her and say, "Hey, let me call you back when I leave the doctor's office with my little girl." And she would just say, okay. And we had a vacation planned. She loved Harry Potter. She was this huge Harry Potter fan. And I said, we're going to go on vacation soon. And, this stress that you're under, you'll feel better because we're going to go to Universal Studios and I'm talking about a future thing. And she really was quiet. She didn't say much. She just said, okay, Mom, I'll talk to you later. And I talked to her up until 8 p.m. the night of June the 1st. It was June the 1st. I talked to her up until 8 p.m. and I got home at 10 p.m. And when I got home, she was home, which was unusual because she was supposed to have been gone to military drills, but I just assumed that for some reason she either was going to go the next day or maybe she had decided not to go, which was not unusual for her to not go. And I said, well, what is she doing home? So when I came in the house, I thought she was asleep. I thought she was asleep on the couch. So I quietly came in, me and my younger daughter, and we were tired because I had driven back from Ohio. And I thought she was asleep. So that next morning, June the 2nd, 2018, I got up and I was telling her I was taking my rental car back. So I called her name several times. She didn't answer. And I went down into my family room area where she was, I thought, asleep. And when I looked at her, I knew she was gone. And I screamed. My 10-year-old at the time, she came in, she screamed. We knew she was gone. And it was just like she came in the world. She came in quickly and quietly. And it's kind of how she left, quickly and quietly. But I knew that she was gone. And so I couldn't look around the room. I ran out of the house. I got help. And when the detectives came, they asked me, was somebody in the house sick? And I told them yes, that I had just had a stem cell transplant and I had cancer and I was the one sick. And they told me that that they had found my medication down in the area where she was, and they had also found a note. She had left a note, and her note basically said that she was sorry, that she loved everybody, that she had been thinking about this for a while, and that she really loved us and she was sorry that she had to leave us. And so, that is her story, and that's my story. And after losing her, I literally almost grieved myself to death, replaying every harsh word I ever said to her, reliving every mistake that I had made as a parent, reliving every call for help that she may have put out into the world that I just didn't see. I replayed everything in my head. And I even blamed other people. I blamed the job that she was unhappy on. I blamed the military. I blamed the relationships that she had. I even blamed myself. I blamed my family. I blamed everybody. And one day I had to just come to the realization that even though, just like everything else that she did, that it was her choice, whether I agreed with it or not, it was her choice to make. And she made the choice to end her life. And I thought it was ironic that she ended her life at 24. And I remember being 24, suffering from postpartum depression, being overwhelmed with life, and having similar feelings when I was 24. And I just thought, if she could have just pushed through whatever she was feeling at that particular moment, she would have lived to see that life got better. Because for me, life got better. And I just don't think that whatever illness, whatever depression, whatever brain, the lack of development of the brain, whatever environmental circumstances, financial circumstances, whatever it was just too overwhelming for her to be able to see life past that. So that's my child's story, and that's my story. And I hope that sharing it helps anybody that's contemplating suicide to understand and realize that, sadness, depression, anxiety, it's energy. It's an energy. And when you decide to end your life, you end your suffering, you end your pain, you end your hurt, your anxiety. But that energy doesn't go away. You just end up passing it to the people that love you and care about you. And for parents, I know when our children get to a certain age, you feel like they don't need you as much. They don't need you prying into their daily life. They don't need you asking questions. They don't need you in their business and in their face. And I would even challenge that to say, oh yeah, they still need you. They just need you in a different kind of way. And when you see signs, when you see isolation, when you see extreme privacy to the point of secrecy, when you see them begin to drink or smoke marijuana or just begin to act out in ways that are contradictory to who they are as people, and you can't ignore it. You can't pray it away. You can't. Praying about it is good and necessary, but it doesn't always make it go away. I remember my daughter actually did tell me she was suffering from some depression. And when I asked her, I said, well, do you want to see somebody? Do you want to talk to somebody? She was like, no, Mom, I'm not crazy. You're making more out of it than what it is. And I remember saying, well, you would tell me, if you needed to talk to somebody. And she was like, yeah. It was almost irritating to her that I would suggest that she talk to somebody. She said that's just how she was feeling at that moment, and she was convinced that it would get better. I was convinced that it would get better. It didn't get better. And my baby, she's gone, and I don't want any other parent or anybody that has people that are struggling in their life to have this kind of pain.
Well, I thank you so much, Ms. Kimberly, for having the strength to tell the story. I know you probably have to tell the story hundreds of times, but we thank you again for sharing this story again, because again, somebody's out there that may be going through depression, who may have thought about committing suicide. And so hearing Mary's story may be a change for them. So I really appreciate that you took the time and the strength to be able to, talk about this again. And so I want to bring in Joyce. Joyce, I want to hear from your side, from the medical professional side, suicide and mental illness. Again, like we said, we're dealing with so much. Actually, yesterday was World Suicide Prevention Day. And so I came across this article that I want to read right quick that talks about some of the things that's going on during the coronavirus. And so it says in May, a national public health group in the United States projected some 75,000 Americans might die from drugs, alcohol misuse, and suicide as a result of the pandemic. And it says data collected by the CDC in June found 11% of Americans surveyed had considered suicide in the previous 30 days. Self-reported unpaid caregivers for adults were more likely to seriously consider suicide, and that was 30.7%, followed by young adults between 18 and 24, that was 25.5%, essential workers, that was 21.7%, and Hispanics was 18.6%, and African Americans was 15.1%. And so it's saying that it's been a rise, you know, with the pandemic that's going on. Of course, there's so many things that can go with that. So tell me from your medical standpoint, what do you see and what are some of the things that as a parent that we should be looking out for, you know, dealing with mental, not even just as a parent, even as a loved one. You know, tell us a little bit more about mental illness and what we should be looking for and some things that we can do to prevent a loved one from committing suicide.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Kia. I want to thank Ms. Kimberly again for sharing your story. It takes a lot of strength and it takes a lot of courage to share Mary's story and Ms. Kimberly's story. It is not easy. So thank you for sharing that with everyone. As Ms. Kia was saying earlier, that it's rising. There's a lot of rise. Suicide ranks as the 10th leading cause of death in the US. And it is ranked as the second leading cause of death for ages 15 through 34. It is something that's a concern in our field, and we definitely see a trend of it increasing through the years. In 2018, SAMHSA did a study, and it was reported that there were 1.2 million suicide attempts in 2018. And every 10 minutes, there's one person that died by suicide. So it is an alarming status. If you are interested in any statistics, there are so many out there, given that it is Suicide Prevention Week, actually. There are a lot of alarming statistics out there. And again, it is something that we definitely need to start addressing more. So I thank the church for allowing me to use this platform to talk a little bit about signs to look out for, to talk a little bit about how we can support our loved ones, ourselves, or survivors. Okay, so some of the signs to look out for, just like Ms. Kimberly was saying, the unusual behaviors that's different from what they were before. It could be changes in mood, it could be irritability, it could be anxiety. One to really look out for is feeling hopeless. The inability to see future, the inability to make plans. That's one that's crucial. There's also signs to look out for that includes isolation. There's substance abuse, there is purposelessness, there's anxiety, there's feeling trapped, feeling that there's no way out for them. There's also withdrawing from family, like withdrawing from friends, withdrawing from society. And you may see increased anger, seeking revenge, almost to a point of rage. And then one more to look out for is recklessness, that they are not their rational self. And the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline has put together a simple phrase for us to remember, and that's called Is Path Warm? And what that is that it lists different warning signs for us to look out for. So is ideation and substance abuse. Path is purposelessness, anxiety, trapped, hopelessness. And lastly, warm is withdrawing, anger, recklessness, and mood changes. And so these are the typical warning signs for us to look out for. Unfortunately, just by these itself, it may not prevent the suicide, but these are definitely things for us to keep an eye on if you notice that with yourself or with your loved ones. So given that this is suicide prevention, suicide is definitely something that is preventable, though it may not always be preventable. I know it's scary to see that as much as we try, it may not be preventable. However, we are here to spread awareness. We're here to talk about it. We're here to provide that support to hopefully catch more people before it escalates to that point. So in a recent study in 2019, actually, it was suggested that 135 people are affected by any suicide. So in other words, if somebody died by suicide, it impacts at least 135 people. So it's not just the immediate family. There are therapists that may be impacted. There are neighbors that may be impacted. There are friends. So it's not just a one-person event or a single family event. So talking about prevention, the important thing is to ask about it. As a family member, to ask if you notice something different, to ask if you notice something that's out of the norm, to encourage them to get support. Now, when you're asking, it is scary to ask your loved ones, are you thinking of suicide? Are you thinking of killing yourself? Now, asking someone if they are thinking of harming themselves is very different. By harming themselves, it could be cutting, it could be biting nails, it could be pulling hairs. When you're asking, be direct. It is okay to be direct. Oftentimes, people think that if we say the word suicide, it may put that idea in their head. It will not. In fact, being direct will increase that chance for them to be open about it. Now, when you're asking, though, it is important to be supportive, to be non-judgmental, to be empathic. And what that means is that we're not there to make plans for them. We're not there to force them into anything. We're there to support them. We're there to listen. We're there to be there with them, to offer that support. And in the clinical world, the recent trend is to talk about that connection, to encourage your loved ones to seek support from a therapist, from a psychiatrist, from a counselor, from a social worker, or even from somebody that it could just be a friend, somebody that they can rely to, somebody that they trust, that they are able to connect and feel safe enough to share these feelings with. So connection is a big theme in the field right now about when it comes to suicide prevention. There's also something that's been talked a lot more is the post-prevention. What that is the support for family members, the support for anybody that was left behind. There are still a lot of stigma around the topic of suicide. In fact, there's a lot of stigma around mental health in general. In studies, in research, it was shown, it showed that a lot of the people who died by suicide had an untreated mental illness. It is unfortunate given insurance situation, given the medical system, given the stigma around mental illness, that oftentimes people shy away from seeking help. It's definitely more true in different cultures as well. So stigma is definitely one that we need to take a look at, and it's definitely one that, well, by talking about it, by being open about it, by sharing information about it, will help decrease that stigma. And again, that support and that connection for family members, for survivors of suicide. It is important to offer that support. It is encouraged to use words like die by suicide. It is encouraged to, the reason for that language is that die by suicide offers a more dignity, it offers more dignity. So you will notice that I've been using the language to die by suicide. In the field of mental illness, a lot of times I hear patients saying, "Oh, I am bipolar." And you wouldn't say that with medical illnesses. You wouldn't say that I am cancer, I'm diabetes. You would say that I'm diagnosed with a certain illness. So when it comes to suicide, we encourage folks to start using the language to die by suicide to offer that dignity for the deceased. And when supporting somebody that lost a family member to suicide, it is important that it is okay to discuss the disease and to definitely use your name. It is okay to talk about it if they're willing to talk about it. And it is okay to talk about their feelings and allow them to share that feeling. And we would discourage people from using the cliche, they are in peace right now, they are not hurting anymore. Oftentimes offering that support to listen to how they're feeling, to be there with them, that's more helpful than saying the different things. And then lastly, I wanted to touched on some of the resources that we have in the Houston area. As Ms. Kia mentioned earlier, I work with a nonprofit that offers free support group. We're called Remind. They are NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And there's the United Way. That's one that I would like to highlight. United Way has a unique directory that allows individuals to look for different kind of services. And the one for Houston, in fact, we are able to inquire the different services by zip code. And so I would encourage everybody to look into it if you are needing help yourself or if your family member is hurting. But you can just find them by dialing 211. And if you are looking to learn more about suicide, American Association of Suicidology has a lot of information and a lot of resources. MHA, Mental Health America, has a lot of resources as well. Texas Suicide Prevention, they offer suicide prevention trainings. So there are a lot of resources out there if you are interested in learning more about suicide. One of the more important aspect that will help us prevent it is that education component, is that awareness, is that sharing that information with everyone. And so I encourage everybody to take a look at it, to learn more about suicide. It is a scary topic. It is a very heavy topic, but it is definitely one that we need to start facing. And so there are a lot of different hotlines out there. The one that's most famous is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It is 1-800-273-8255. And it was passed recently that there will be a 3-digit code, just like 911, that we are able to implement in 2022, I believe. So I hate to rush through all of the information, but these are the main things that I want to share with everyone. And I encourage everyone to hopefully spread the word to start looking into suicide prevention and allow us to continue to hopefully prevent more possible suicide attempts, suicide, and to prevent suicide in the future.
Thank you, Joyce. I really appreciate all that information. So at this time we have Q&A. We have a few questions that came in through the live chat. So Ms. Kimberly, you had mentioned that you have other children. So how has your other children been affected by the death of Mary? And how are you able to cope and handle with them about the death of your daughter?
Well, my oldest daughter is 30 and she doesn't live at home. So, it was very hard for her because they grew up together. They were shared a room together. She took it very hard, and as we all did. My 10-year-old didn't show a lot of emotion. I think she was just in shock because she was with me when I found her. We found her together, basically. And so, of course, I immediately put her in grief counseling. And to this day, she still hasn't talked a lot about it, other than just to say why. It's something I just really felt compelled to say. We talk about having direct conversations with our loved ones and asking them directly, are they planning suicide? And I'm sure that that's a national recommendation. I'm sure that people, researchers, doctors, all think that is, the right thing to do, and it probably is. But I just feel compelled to say that when it came to my daughter, she took an assessment in the military 2 weeks before she committed suicide. And they asked it, I looked at the paper, I looked at the form. When it came to her self-report, where they asked her, did she have any thoughts of suicide? She flat out said no. When I asked her if she wanted to see a counselor, she said no. So I think in some instances, when they have resigned themselves to end their lives, you can't even take what their words are anymore. You have to look at those behaviors. They were more telling. When it came to my daughter, the behaviors were more telling than what she was actually saying. She had always been very responsible, very meticulous with her finances, saved money, evaluated every cent that she spent before she spent it. And those 2 weeks before she died, she just ran through money. She never wanted to be alone, like in a home alone. And I was gone for months at a time, gone to Texas, and she stayed in the house alone. Like, her behaviors changed. Her word said that she wasn't in trouble, but her behavior screamed that she was, in hindsight, now that I'm looking at it. So please don't just rely on, if you ask them, are they considering self-harm, or are they considering suicide or taking their life, or however you would say it. Don't just take their words, look at their actions. That is more telling. It will always be more telling than their words. Now, as far as another thing about my 10-year-old, back to the poster's question. Remember I told you I had fought so hard to live. Then I came home and my daughter died. I really literally checked out mentally and was not actively committing suicide, but inactively. I wasn't eating. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't getting up out of the bed. I wasn't doing the normal things that a person needs to do on a daily basis to care for themselves. I wasn't taking medications, and I just had a stem cell transplant. I had pretty much resign myself to just, my daughter was gone. She's gone in a horrible way. I can't keep trying to live. But it was my 10-year-old that said, Mama, that's not fair. I'm still here and I need you. That kind of jolted me back into reality that my daughter is gone. I'm devastated by her being gone, but I have to live. And I have to live not only for my 10-year-old, but I have to live for myself and make some meaning out of this whole nightmare that I found myself in. I have to make meaning out of it. So that's why these types of conversations are now going to be a regular part of my life.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Kim. So I have a question for you, Joyce, that came in. What are family or friends' moral and legal obligation if they hear a loved one make a suicide comment?
Well, this is a pretty big question. Yeah. Well, as a loved ones, we definitely encourage, if you think they're in crisis, just like Ms. Kimberly was saying, if you see that sign, if you see that warning sign, definitely reach out to hospitals, definitely reach out to therapists. They may be able to help them. You can definitely take them to the nearest ER. However, the difficulty with that is that they can definitely deny that they're trying to take their life. That's unfortunate. With mental health professionals, we are not able to keep them if they deny, flat out say, I'm not thinking of killing myself. That's unfortunate. But with family members, we definitely encourage, if you see that warning sign, take them to the hospital, take them to see a doctor, take them to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a counselor. Offer different support, offer to be there, offer to listen to them. Unfortunately, again, that we can be doing everything quote unquote correctly. It may not be preventable. Again, it is important, just like Ms. Kimberly was saying, to keep an eye on those behaviors. And if you notice anything early on, to see if you are able to implement that treatment early on. And so they are able to get help, so they have people that they can connect with. Hopefully that answers the question.
It did. It answered 3 questions that's on here. So you're doing good. Okay, Ms. Kimberly, I have a question for you. How has your faith helped you through your healing process?
I would say that I struggled with my faith right after losing my daughter, because I just could not understand why. I kept saying, why my daughter, why? And I know some other friends who have lost their children kept saying, I will not make it if I continue to ask why. It was his timing. It was nothing happens that he doesn't allow to happen. And over time, that anger turned to resolve, and I started to see a purpose in it, and that I have faith that my daughter's death and her life, not just her death, but her life, that God even still has a purpose for it now, that her story will help somebody else, and my story will help somebody else. So I think that it has strengthened my faith. It has strengthened my desire. My daughter, my youngest daughter, I noticed even her faith has been strengthened through all of this, because mean, for us, we had nowhere else to turn but to our faith in our God. So it's strengthened it.
Okay, and what are some of the things that you have done for your self-care to help you heal?
I'm really just now beginning to start doing some things. I was ill when my daughter died, and I've had some struggles continuing to be well. So now I kind of do what I want to do. It was some things that I was doing out of obligation that I just decided can't live like that anymore. I have to do some things that I want to do. And of course, and then I invest a lot of time in my youngest daughter, helping her with pretty much anything that she wants to do, and making sure that she has all the opportunities in the world, and that some of the struggles that my other daughter had, that she'll never have those struggles. I have really good friends in Texas, and I spend a lot of time with them. They understand, I don't have to explain how I feel, and they've been right there, very supportive. And in fact, Evelyn and Nia, I love you, and I don't think I could have made it without that support. So just surrounding myself with people who understand. And now an assignment that I never wanted. I never wanted this assignment, never would have thought I would have had it. But something else that I do now is I reach out to other parents who are struggling, and maybe they haven't lost their child yet, but they're afraid they're going to lose their child. I help other parents. I help some other young people. I teach at a university, and I've been very transparent about my daughter's story. That's the age group that is very prevalent in. So I do a lot of communicating with them, a lot of intervening and referring, and doing things there that is very rewarding. And then finally supporting other parents who have lost their children, like the two friends that I've had to lose children in the last 9 days.
Okay, and Joyce,
and telling them it's not their fault.
I'm sorry. Yes, it's not their fault. Yes, yes. Yes. Okay, and Joyce, this is our last question. Should parents be concerned about teens nowadays saying dead all the time when something is funny, or telling one another to go kill themselves online?
It definitely is a concerning phenomenon that we're seeing. Oftentimes, these are almost languages that they use on a day-to-day basis in their communication. It is important to take a look at their intention when they say that. It is important to educate them that these are not things to be joked about. These are not things to be take lightly about. These are something that we definitely need to be careful with. These are words that we need to be careful with. Just like I was saying about the language that we use when it comes to suicide or when it comes to mental illness. We never know if one word or one sentence will trigger something from another child. So it is important to keep an eye out on those verbiage and definitely take a look at their intent. But I would encourage more education and more talk to them about those languages. And that'll be a starting point that I would encourage folks to start taking a look at.
Thank you so much, Ms. Joyce and Ms. Kimberly. Once again, this has been such a delicate topic, and again, it's a topic that's needed. It's a topic that affects any generation, any race, any class. It's a topic that's very common in this country that affects us all, regardless of our color, regardless of our status. It's something that we all have in common. So I really appreciate you guys taking your time out today to share this information. We pray that this information will get across to the right person, and so they would think twice for making their decision and realize that what they're leaving behind if they do choose to do that. And so that being said, I want to, this poem came across my phone today, and I think it fits this occasion, so I want to read it right quick. And it says, "Don't quit. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh. When care's pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is a queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a failure turns about when he might have won, had stuck it out. Don't give up. Though the pace seems slow, you may succeed without another blow. Often a goal is nearer than it seems to faint and flattered men. Often the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learned too late when the night slipped down how close he was the golden crown. Success is a failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. And you never tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seems worse that you must not quit. So I pray today that somebody don't quit. You know, we know life is tough. We know God never told us that everything's going to be gravy, but he did tell us not to give up and put our trust into him. So I pray today that somebody will hear this message and will hear this story that Ms. Kimberly and the information that Ms. Joyce have given us today that is going to impact someone's life and make that decision to live and not die. So ladies, thank you once again. Thank you, Crossing Point. Thank you, Pastor Hayes and Lady Shannon, for allowing us to be on the Zoom call live today. And again, a lot of information out there. So if there's anyone that is thinking about committing suicide, please reach out. You can reach out us here at the Cross. You can call United Way and we can get you connected to the right person. And again, thank you, Ms. Kimberly, for taking the time out, and thank you for your strength, telling your story of Mary. And we're going to keep Mary's legacy alive, and her death was not in vain. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. Continue to be strong. And of course, if you need anything from me, I'm here. I will keep in contact with you because this is the beginning of our relationship. So I will be praying for you and your family, and I pray for your health. And thank you, Joyce, so much. I really appreciate it. You didn't have to do this, and thank you for the information you have given us. So once again, thank you, Facebook. Thank you, Crossing Point. And we see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much. Y'all have a good night. Bye-bye.